There is a kind of fear that does not arrive with noise. It does not shake your life, it does not demand your attention, it does not declare itself as danger. It moves quietly. It slips into your thoughts, into your routines, into the way you interpret your own story. And when it stays long enough, it stops feeling like fear at all. It begins to feel like truth. This fear is subtle. It copies the tone of reason. It borrows the sound of clarity. It speaks as if it knows what is final. It tells you that what you feel now will follow you forever, that what you fear today is already written into tomorrow, that your limits are fixed. It whispers, not everything you hope for is real. Not everything you desire is meant for you. Not every step forward is safe. And because its voice sounds familiar, you believe it. You believed it on the mornings when heaviness met you before you opened your eyes. You believed it on days when progress was slow and you assumed the problem was you. You believed it in the quiet moments when doubt wrapped itself around your thoughts so naturally that it felt like honesty rather than fear. This fear hides well. It attaches itself to old wounds. It echoes voices you once trusted. It repeats your mistakes and presents them as verdicts. It gathers every moment you felt unprepared, unseen, or unsure, and it builds its argument from them. But none of this is truth. It is only fear wearing a familiar mask. You have carried this voice for so long that its presence feels like part of you. When something feels familiar, we rarely question it. That is what this fear wants. Not to frighten you, but to shape you. To define the way you understand yourself. To frame your challenges before you even face them. To guide your choices in ways you do not notice. You are not weak for having believed it. You are human. When your wounds remain unspoken, fear begins to speak in their place. When hope feels dangerous, fear learns to sound responsible. When you have walked through seasons with no one to steady your thoughts, fear learns how to imitate clarity. But now something in you is noticing its tone. A small part of you recognizes that the heaviness you've been carrying is not a fact, but a story. A story created during years when you were simply trying to endure. A story shaped by exhaustion, uncertainty, and silence. There is a moment in every soul when the voice of fear becomes just clear enough to be recognized. Not as truth, not as prophecy, not as judgment, but as a frightened attempt to protect you from being hurt again. This is that moment for you. You have felt it recently. The tightness in your chest, the hesitation before you move forward, the sudden doubt that arrives even when nothing is wrong. These are not signs of failure. They are signs that the old fear is losing its place. When fear is exposed, it becomes louder for a while. Not because it grows stronger, but because it knows it cannot hide. It knows you are beginning to see it. And here is the quiet turning point. When you see fear for what it is, you reclaim a part of yourself you thought you had lost. You begin to recognize that the voice calling you inadequate is not the voice of truth. You begin to question the thoughts you once accepted without resistance. You begin to feel the distance between who you are and what fear has been telling you. You are not the voice that doubts you. You are the one who hears it. And the one who hears it is stronger than the voice itself. This is how the shift begins, not through dramatic moments or sudden clarity, but through a quiet realization. This fear is not truth. It is only the oldest explanation you learned for your pain. Something deeper in you is waking, something steady, something unbroken. It does not shout, it simply rises. And as it rises, the fear that once felt certain begins to weaken. Because truth never needs to pretend. It does not disguise itself. It does not weigh you down. Truth steadies you. truth gives you room to breathe. Truth makes space inside you that fear once filled. You are closer to that truth than you think. There is a place inside the soul where fear settles when it wants to feel permanent. It does not take this place by force. It chooses the quiet corners, the thoughts you repeat often, the memories that still sting, the doubts you never voiced. It hides there because it knows you rarely look directly at the things that hurt. You have carried this fear through seasons when you were overwhelmed, tired, or simply trying to survive. You did not question it then. You accepted its voice because you needed something that felt certain, even if that certainty came from shadows rather than truth. This is how fear survives, not by overpowering you, but by convincing you that its weight belongs to you. It tells you that your hesitation is wisdom, that your self-doubt is caution, that your exhaustion is clarity. It tells you that staying small is safer than taking a step, that your longings are unrealistic, that you should not reach toward what matters most to you. Fear never introduces itself as fear. It always says, "This is the truth." And for a long time, you believed it. You had real wounds, real disappointments, real moments when no one explained the difference between fear and truth. When life teaches you hard lessons, fear becomes a convincing teacher. But something in you has begun to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, more like a small light returning to a room that has been dim for years. You notice moments when a familiar, fearful thought appears and you pause, just slightly. You hear doubt rise, but it no longer settles as quickly. You sense a question forming inside you. But is that really true? This is the first sign of awakening. You begin to question what once felt unquestionable. It means something in you has grown, not in a way that shouts, but in a way that steadies. You are becoming someone who can observe your fear rather than obey it. You may not feel strong, you may not feel confident, but the fact that you can see fear for what it is, even briefly, means that something deeper in you is already awake. You have survived things that would have broken another person's sense of worth. You walked through seasons where you carried doubts that were too heavy to name. You held on to responsibilities that asked more from you than you had to give. And still, here you are, breathing again, separating memory from identity, learning to see yourself without fear's commentary. There is a gentleness in this part of the journey. This is not a battle. You do not need to fight fear. You simply need to stop letting it speak in the place of truth. Fear speaks from memory. Truth speaks from possibility. Fear repeats what has been. Truth reveals what can be. Fear pulls every wound into the present moment. Truth reminds you that healing is already moving through your life, even if quietly. You may not feel this yet. That is normal. Healing does not feel like strength at the beginning. It feels like confusion. It feels like letting go of conclusions you carried for years. It feels like standing without the old explanations you once depended on. This is not weakness. This is growth choosing a different direction. There is a moment, and you may be in it now, when the soul becomes tired of living within a story written by fear. That moment is sacred. It is the quiet return of dignity. It is the first breath of self-respect you may not have felt in a long time. You are not broken. You are carrying fear that learned to sound like truth. You are not failing. You are facing a voice that has guided your inner world for years. You are not lost. You are uncovering a path that was hidden beneath fear's shadow. And here is something many people never realize. Fear does not appear in the parts of your life that do not matter. It appears exactly where you are meant to grow, at the doorway of change, at the threshold of deeper honesty, in the places where your heart is preparing for something more. Fear pretends to be truth because truth is the only force strong enough to replace it. And that is what is happening in you now. The old voice is trembling. The familiar certainty is cracking. The shadows are losing their shape, not because you push them away, but because the light within you is rising. Truth rises slowly, but it rises steadily, and fear cannot hold its disguise forever. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when fear starts revealing more about itself than about you. You begin to notice its patterns. You see how it always appears at the edge of something new, how it grows louder when you are close to change, how it twists small uncertainties into heavy conclusions, how it tells you the risk is too great, the hope too fragile, the desire awakening in you unrealistic. Fear does not speak this way because it has wisdom. It speaks this way because it is afraid of losing influence. For years, it shaped the way you made decisions. It set the limits you thought were natural. It edited your thoughts before you even voiced them. It convinced you to stay guarded, cautious, quiet. It believed it was protecting you. But what protects you in one season can hold you back in the next. Fear does not understand this shift. It only knows how to hold on. When your soul begins to outgrow it, when something deeper in you starts seeking a wider life, fear reacts. Not with chaos, but with softness that sounds like certainty. It tries to tighten its grip. It tries to label your growth as a mistake. It tries to sound like the voice of reason again. But if you listen closely, you notice something new. Its words no longer land the way they once did. What used to feel final now feels questionable. What used to silence you now leaves space for doubt. What used to hold authority now sounds thinner, less steady. Fear has not changed. You have. Something in you is becoming more honest, more awake, more aligned with truth than with memory, more connected to who you are becoming, not who you were forced to be. You may not feel stronger, but you are. Strength does not always appear as confidence. Sometimes it appears first as discomfort. The discomfort of no longer fitting into the smaller story fear wrote for you. Fear pretends to be truth, but it cannot imitate the peace truth brings. This is how you begin to tell the difference. When fear speaks, something in you tightens. When truth speaks, something in you opens. Truth does not rush you. It does not use threats. It does not accuse you or rehearse your past mistakes. It does not call you unworthy or unprepared. Truth steadies you. Truth softens you. Truth makes space for breath inside a life that felt narrow. And when that space appears, even for a moment, you begin to understand something essential. The fear you lived with for so long was not a reflection of your limits. It was a reflection of your wounds. Your wounds taught fear how to speak. Fear taught you how to interpret your life. And together they formed a story that felt true only because you repeated it for years. But familiarity is not truth. And you are beginning to see that now. You are learning to distinguish between the two kinds of fear. The fear that protects you and the fear that prevents you from becoming who you truly are. The protective fear appears in real danger. The deceptive fear appears at the doorway of possibility. The deceptive fear is the one that tells you, this will fail, you are not ready, do not try, others can, not you, stay where you are. But your soul is tired of staying where it no longer fits. You feel it in the restlessness that rises when you imagine change. You feel it in the sadness that comes when you picture yourself living the same story forever. You feel it when you look at your own reflection and sense that the life around you is too small for the person you are becoming. Fear cannot stop this awakening. It can only delay it, and even that is happening less and less. You are starting to hear the quieter voice beneath the fear, the voice that does not push, does not demand, does not frighten, the voice that waits for you to recognize it as your own. At first, this voice feels unfamiliar. It may feel fragile. It may feel like something you are afraid to trust. But truth often begins this way, quietly, patiently. And when you allow even a moment of that truth to reach you, something shifts inside. A slow return to yourself. A small alignment you cannot explain, but you feel it. You realize you are not someone fear gets to define. You are someone fear tried to protect, sometimes clumsily, sometimes too tightly. But you are not bound to its guidance anymore. You do not need to fight fear. You simply need to stop treating it as truth. That is what you are learning now, calmly, steadily, honestly. This is the rise of your inner strength, not loud, not dramatic, but real. There is a moment, and you may feel it approaching, when the soul can no longer live inside a story shaped by fear. This moment does not arrive suddenly. It comes the way morning light comes into a dark room, slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed, until you realize the darkness is no longer complete. What you are feeling now is not confusion. It is clarity that has not yet found its full voice. Fear senses this before you do. That is why it has been louder recently. That is why it interrupts your thoughts when you imagine a different future. That is why it questions your hope before your hope has time to settle. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that truth inside you is rising, and fear cannot keep its disguise much longer. Fear pretends to be truth, but it cannot imitate the calm that truth brings. It cannot imitate the quiet strength that appears when you finally stop running from yourself. It cannot imitate the dignity that awakens when you realize you deserve a life that is not controlled by old wounds. The fear you carry is not your enemy. It is a younger part of you, a part that once learned to warn you because it had to. It learned to expect disappointment because disappointment was familiar. It learned to doubt joy because joy once disappeared too quickly. It learned to hold on to the past because the past felt predictable, even when it was painful. When you understand this, something inside you softens. You stop treating fear as a judgment. You begin to see it as a memory from a time when you did not have the support, the clarity, or the strength you have now. A memory from seasons when you were doing your best with what you had. And as soon as you see fear for what it is, its authority weakens. You begin to sense the truth beneath it. The truth that you are no longer the person who lived those earlier wounds. You have grown. You have endured. You have learned. You have survived more than you acknowledge. And the self standing here now is not defined by the shadows behind you. This realization does not erase fear. It simply brings it into the light. And once fear is in the light, it can no longer pretend. It cannot claim to be truth. It cannot present its trembling as certainty. It cannot tell you that your limits are permanent. It cannot convince you that your future is only a reflection of your past. Truth begins to speak differently now. It tells you that the heaviness you feel is not proof of inadequacy. It is your body releasing an old story. It tells you that the doubt you hear is not a warning. It is the echo of wounds that no longer define you. It tells you that the longing in your chest is not unrealistic. It is your soul remembering where it is meant to go. It tells you that every small step forward is not a risk. It is a return. You are returning to yourself, not the self shaped by fear, but the self shaped by quiet truth. The truth that has been waiting beneath every layer of uncertainty. This truth does not shout, it does not rush, but it is steady, and it does not waver. Listen to what it tells you. You are not broken, you are becoming. You are not weak, you are tired from carrying too much for too long. You are not lost, you are walking out of rooms where fear once kept you small. You are not unworthy, you are finally learning to see yourself with honesty instead of fear. Truth does not ask you to be fearless. It simply invites you to be sincere. Sincere about what hurts, sincere about what you desire, sincere about what no longer fits, sincere about the life your heart quietly knows is meant for you. And when you allow that sincerity to rise, the fear that once pretended to be truth begins to fade. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily, the way fog lifts when the day warms. You are stronger than you think. You are deeper than you realize. You are closer to clarity than you know. And the path ahead is not shaped by yesterday's shadows. It is shaped by the quiet strength awakening in you now. The strength that does not seek applause, does not need noise, and does not doubt itself. The strength that knows, fear is not the author of your life. You are. Your soul is stepping into a new season. A season guided not by the trembling voice of fear, but by the steady voice of truth. A season where you no longer shrink to fit old memories, but grow into the fullness that has been waiting for you. Walk gently, walk steadily, walk without rushing. The truth in you knows the way. Walk in the light, even on the days it feels distant.